3, 2, 1.
Here we go!
Talent Experience Live. We're covering everything that you need to know in talent experience.
People applying for new positions is like the cherry on top.
With the technology to attract talent.
Recruiters always know their best talent.
The AI just learns to use that information.
Inclusion efforts across the organization.
Tell me what it's like to work for through associate story.
Interviews with leaders in the industry. Talk about what's new in HR tech. What are the hot topics? We're here every week, folks. Weekly look at the latest and greatest topics in HR. What's up, everyone? Welcome to Talent Experience Live. As I like to say, this is the greatest show on the internet. You will be hard-pressed to find a better show at 12 p.m. Eastern on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. This is the place to be every week if you are a recruiter, a sourcer, a talent marketer, or a talent manager. If you're just joining us, we go live every Thursday, 12 p.m. Eastern, on your social network of choice. Be sure to like, subscribe, get notified so that you never miss a beat. We love being here. We wouldn't be here if you weren't as well. So thank you so much for joining us today. I'm your host, Tom Tate. I'm on the marketing team here at Phenom. Talent Experience Live is proudly brought to you by the team at Phenom. Our purpose is to help 1 billion people find the right job. I did not misspeak. It's a true billion. We are well on our way. We can't do it without our amazing community. And we do it with a talent experience platform that we call Phenom TXM. This helps candidates find the right fit faster. It helps employees evolve in their current role and beyond. It helps recruiters achieve some of that next level of productivity and efficiency. And it helps managers build better teams with data, analytics, and automation. All of this is powered by super slick artificial intelligence and machine learning. If you're interested and you want to learn more, head on over to phenom.com, and we would love to share more with you. I want to shout out everyone in the chat. Let me know who you are, where you're from, what you do. This is a great opportunity to connect with each other, connect with your peers. Sometimes you're looking for someone who does something specific, and this is a great opportunity to find those people. So let me know where you're tuning in from. I always like to joke that I work for the internet. I get to engage with people all across the globe. Super exciting for me. So let me know who you are, where you're from, what you do. And we always like to kick things off with a little icebreaker question as well, too. So today, my icebreaker question today is, what is your favorite podcast? I know that podcast consumption went down a little bit when the pandemic hit. People weren't driving to work as frequently anymore. People weren't doing the daily commute. But from what I gather, podcasting is back in full effect. So if you listen to podcasts, if you listen to audio podcasts, let me know in the chat what has been your favorite show. And I will chime in with a couple of my favorites as well to kick things off. So I've really been enjoying the Bo and Luke show. We had Bo and Luke on the past couple of episodes, helping us out with some content. And Masters of Scale is one of my favorites. Masters of Scale with Reid Hoffman. It's another good one. Yeah, we got some comments coming through. Kristen, senior recruiter with Abbott. Welcome, Kristen. How are you? Pratima, welcome. Google product analysts, looking for product owner roles. Awesome. Favorite podcast is Beer Biceps. I really want to learn more about Beer Biceps. That sounds amazing. Yeah, and also from Chicago, Pratima, welcome. Great to have you with us today. So if you have a favorite podcast, shout it out in the comments. I posted a few weeks back on LinkedIn. I posted, do you know anyone in HR, in culture, in talent acquisition, any teams out there that started an internal or external podcast? Because I'd love to chat with them. I'm a little bit biased because I love the medium, but I think that internal podcasts are just such an incredible way to engage, educate, and connect employees. And I don't see that many companies really taking advantage of this, right? So I know for a fact, because I've done this in the past, these can be used to really educate employees on new products, new services. It can help you educate employees on core values and business objectives. They can be used to connect employees to the brand and also to each other. There's so many different use cases for internal podcasts to really bring together your workforce. And they can also be used to celebrate diversity and promote inclusion at an organization. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. You know, nowadays, you see a lot of diversity content that finds its home on the company website, on the career sites, on the About Us page. And that's where it lives forever, right? It is stuck behind bars on the About Us page or the diversity and inclusion page. And a lot of times you'll go on those pages and you'll see a lot of stock photography. You're not even seeing photographs of the real employees. And that's a challenge, right? So how can you break through that barrier and really unleash some of the amazing stories and the amazing content that your organization likely has, right? So luckily today we have two amazing guests who are making great strides in promoting DE&I and creating employee-centric content that really celebrates inclusivity and belonging. So here to talk about their efforts and internal podcast, Ally in the Room, we're going to dig into this. I'm excited to welcome Melissa Michael and Derek Herman of CAI to the show. So without further ado, let's bring them on. Melissa and Derek, welcome to Talent Experience Live. Happy to have you both.
Happy to be here.
So we had some technical issues, but we sorted them out. We're here. I'm super excited. Thank you guys so much for being with us today. I'm excited to dig into it. For folks who have been following Phenom for a bit, you may have recognized Derek Herman. He is a Phenom alum. So Derek, welcome back to a Phenom hosted piece of content here. But you have an amazing new role at CAI. So why don't you share kind of who you are and what you do at CAI?
Yeah, thanks. So little known fact, I was at Phenom 2-3 years ago, and I was joking with Melissa right before we jumped on that I was like, I'm such a Phenom brand advocate, and I know that Melissa and some other employees here are kind of like, okay, yeah, we get it. You were at Phenom, like you love Phenom, but yeah, so I was at Phenom, but now I am the director of communications here at CAI. And really, the communications team has three pillars. And whenever I describe it, it's these three responsibilities. It's internal communications, keeping our employees engaged, informed, external communications, PR, press release, sound bites, and then employer branding and boasting about how great it is to be here and become employer of choice.
I love it. And Melissa, why don't you share kind of what your role is at CAI as well?
You know what? I cannot hear much of anything. So I'm going to take myself out and come back in. I'm going to find a different location. So just hang tight.
No worries. No worries. Yeah, that's fine. We will keep the show rolling. So appreciate that. So Derek, CAI, it seems to have DE&I really built into the fabric of the organization, right? You can see that. And I mentioned earlier too, that, a lot of times diversity content just kind of lives on that About Us page or lives on that diversity and inclusion page. And I know for a fact that at CAI, it goes well beyond that. But that said, you do have a really fantastic diversity and inclusion page on your site. So if you want to learn more about it, it's all there. There's a really great quote that I found from your president, Tom. Our people are the most important asset to CAI. My commitment is to be intentional and relentless in our journey of valuing differences, ensuring equality, and fostering an inclusive environment. So it sounds like from the top down, right, you have strong backing, right, of diversity and inclusion built into the fabric of the organization. Am I accurate in kind of saying that?
Yep. Nope. Absolutely. Yeah. And that's exactly how it's kind of survived and thrived, is because we have this executive buy-in to understand that it's not just a nice thing to do. It's not something you check off the box. It's not something that brings in candidates. Yes, it does all those things, but it is the right thing to do. So Tom said it perfectly.
Yeah. And you see great quotes from presidents like that, looks like Melissa's back. So we're going to bring her back in. Melissa, how are you?
I'm good. Sorry.
Can you hear us? No problem. Take your time to get set up. Appreciate it. I know, we're typically not on mobile devices, but we're operating on mobile devices today. So thank you to everyone in the audience for helping us through this. So Melissa, I do have a question for you. If you're hearing us okay. So one of the things we always talk about, well, first of all, I'd love to know what your official role is at CAI. Okay. We talked a little bit before, but I'd love to know what your official role is. And after that, I'd love for you to tell us kind of what was your journey to that role. We always joke on the show that nobody wakes up when they're, 5-6 years old and says, I want to get into human resources when I grow up. So I'm curious kind of how you ended up, where are you and how did you end up there?
Okay, so my current role is executive director of HCM operations. So I oversee all of payroll, benefits, compliance activities for HR, as well as diversity, equity, and inclusion. As usual, I had no idea what HR is. Trying to explain it to my kids is tough as well. But I was a food marketing major in college, and I worked for giant food stores. And just so happened at the point in time when I was working there, they had some massive hiring events. So I got into it that way. Found out I did not have a love for retail, but I did have a love for HR. I thought it was the perfect way to kind of blend, how much I like to work with people. And also, it's become more and more important to the business.
Yeah. And just before, as you were switching locations, Derek and I were talking, D&I is definitely built into the fabric of your organization. You have a fantastic website page that has a great quote from your president, Tom, and I shared that quote. And it also explores a little bit about a DEI council that you have at CAI. So I'm curious if you could share with us kind of what does the DEI council consist of, and what is your general approach, to really fostering diversity and inclusion at CAI?
Sure. So our DEI council is made up of a group of individuals throughout the organization. All of us are in some type of a leadership position, but not just within HR. We actually have the president of the company who sits on the DEI board, along with various leaders that kind of cross the business, both in different portfolios, as well as different geographies, ethnicities. And while myself and my manager, who's the CHRO, kind of devise what our goals are going to be for a given year, those have to kind of, I want to say, be blessed by the DEI board to make sure that, it kind of aligns with who we are, doing that kind of check and balance system. So they will bring up things that we hadn't thought of yet. And sometimes we will enlighten them as well. One of the things that came up more recently was there was this preconceived notion of what our, ethnic makeup was as a company. But when you look at the actual numbers, it's vastly different from what, we're kind of perceived as. So, you're able to have that discussion. Well, number one, why are we perceived that way? And two, how can we combat that to show that we are, very diverse?
Yeah. And I think it's awesome to hear that you have kind of the executive leadership on the team, right? You see that a lot where organizations will have a DEI council or a resource group, but they don't have the executive buy-in, right? So I think knowing that you have it from the top down is super important, right? So you're already doing a lot of amazing things, right? You have the DEI council with the executive buy-in. You have great content on your website to date, and we talked about that. Content on the website, sometimes that's as far as it goes, right? But what I've learned from Derek and from you, Melissa, is that you've taken that content a step further, right? And you're able to really bring it to your employees in an interesting way. And that's usually what's missing, right? You're usually missing that element of letting employees share their actual stories, right? Short of like a single quote on the website. And what I really want to explore today is how can organizations go beyond the About Us page? How can they go beyond, checking the DEI boxes, right? The bare minimums, right? And really start to celebrate diversity at the organization. So Derek, at CAI, you've found a really phenomenal way to do this by creating an internal podcast. So why don't you share, tell us about Ally in the Room. What is it? What's the format? How did it come about? How long have you been running it?
Love it. Yeah, so 2.5 some years ago when I started, I came to Melissa with this idea. So I got a lay of the land as to who CAI is, right? CAI, Melissa had mentioned earlier that we have 3 portfolios. We also have a learning academy. We have so many different facets to who CAI is and what we do. But we also have this whole DEI component. So I wanted to create a channel, an avenue for employees to have a voice, to explain who they are, why they're here, what they're doing, especially in, the pandemic. Started in 2020. So it was a way to get to know your employees better and better understand the business. So it was kind of multifold in all of these different things. So I came to Melissa, knowing all of this. I come to Melissa and I said, hey, I have this great idea. I think it's a great idea for a podcast. We should do a podcast, and we should call it Ally in the Room, addressing hot topics. So it's a play on the phrase elephant in the room, but ally in the room, getting an ally to talk about whatever it is, the business or a DEI topic story, right? So come to her, and she's maybe a little hesitancy in the beginning, but got buy-in from her, and then we got buy-in from our boss, and started this podcast. We just closed out season 1 beginning of this year. We had 13, 14 guests, all talking about a different topic. We get people from, caregivers of people with autism. We have LGBTQ plus employees, parents of LGBTQ plus children. We get leaders, we get worker bees. It's the whole gamut of everyone, because CAI has many different voices, many different faces. And so we were trying to showcase that with Ally in the Room.
Yeah, I love it. I had a leader a few jobs back who always said start it dangerous, right? Start it dangerous and then work your way back, right? And it sounds like you just went for it, right? You said, hey, we're going to start this podcast, and this is going to really help us showcase and explore these stories that we know we have here. That's the other thing too, is like, you have the stories there, and it's just how do you tap into them? How do you unlock them? Melissa, I'm assuming CAI on your side of the house, on your team, you've never created a podcast before, right? So was that new?
That was very new. I've listened to them. I listen to podcasts.
Sure.
My husband listens to a lot. And so, once I got the buy-in and I, Derek convinced me, took a little bit because, I'm thinking, okay, here's this new guy trying to, make his name, but he did an excellent job. So he got me to buy in. We were able to get our boss to buy in as well. But, there's those individuals that listen to podcasts a lot and are very familiar. I was, and I think Derek's probably is the same, shocked at how many people weren't really sure as to what a podcast was.
Sure.
So we had to kind of get through that as well to explain it. We had guests on that, we're like, well, this is going to be edited, or, do you do takes? So like, how do we go through this? And so try to equate that to just having a conversation was a little bit tough. And, I think, with your HR hat on, I'm sure there's a lot of people listening that, when conversations are happening, you want them to be authentic, but you also have to make sure it gets that stamp of approval that it's appropriate. So, we were a little hesitant, but I think after our first couple, and especially when they came out, it was so natural and it was conversation, and there really wasn't anything that would be considered off topic because it was very, good conversation.
Yeah. What we were doing, right? Webinars and things like that, internal webinars and things, like, they're great, but that's presenting an idea. Here, it's more that authentic conversation, just talk about a topic that, exists in the world. So, and our employees have ideas around it. So we give them that voice. And that's exactly what the point of Ally in the Room was.
Yeah, I'll never forget. We had one guest that we were going to come, we said, hey, we'd like to interview. And he had sent us this PowerPoint presentation. And we were like, okay, I think you've just missed the mark a little bit.
Yeah.
Let's do that. So that was definitely interesting as we were going through.
I love the dynamic difference, right? It's the difference between talking to you versus talking with you, and I think that is critical, right? When we're having these types of opportunities to explore stories, you're exploring the stories, you're not reading off of a script, and you're not giving a presentation. So I love that for sure. How did you, Derek, maybe this is a good question for you. How did you determine who to reach out to? Like, what was the process for kind of reaching out to folks? Did you do an open call and say, hey, we're looking for guests, or did you identify guests? I'm curious what that process was like.
You're looking at her. Melissa was the key.
Yeah.
Was the key component to all of this. So I was brand new. I had no idea.
You're the idea guy.
Yes. I was like, I have an idea. Let's just now run with it. How do we execute upon it? Melissa has rich amount of experience here. And so she knows everyone and their mothers and their wives and their husbands. Like, she knows everyone. So I knew that she was a really good resource to tap into. But what we did do though was we wanted to be timely, right? So like right now we're in Pride Month. And so, we were like, okay, in June, let's get an LGBTQ plus story out there in Autism Acceptance Month during April. Let's get someone with autism, or maybe a caregiver of someone with autism. So we kind of plotted out throughout the year. I think it was like 9-10 months throughout the first season, what we wanted the topics that we wanted to cover. And then I had Melissa help me identify from there who we wanted. And I knew that we wanted to have a mixture of a bunch of different people. So we're talking about diversity, right? But also different titles. Like our first episode, we got Tom Savaggio, our president, on, and it was fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
But we also wanted to get other people too on, people who maybe aren't as well known within the organization. They have voices, they have opinions, they have thoughts and feelings. And they have these great stories. So we wanted to give them that voice as well. Just making it more inclusive and meeting our employees where they are.
Yeah, I loved what you said too. For anybody out there who's watching this and is kind of inspired and thinking, okay, maybe this is something our team can do. Every month is a month, right? So like, it is Pride Month. Last month, we celebrated Mental Health Awareness Month. We did a lot of content on Talent Experience Live around that. We also did some content around veteran appreciation, military appreciation, which was also last month. So it does provide a nice framework. If you want an easy framework to say, okay, what types of content, what types of stories should we tell? The framework does kind of exist, right? So it is a good opportunity to kind of look to it that way. When you reached out to employees, especially employees who rarely create this type of content, who rarely get in front of people with their stories, did you come up with any like trepidation, like people who were reluctant or people who were nervous or people who just, they weren't quite sure? And did you have to kind of talk through it with them?
I was going to say, I don't know that we had a lot of trepidation. Once we had a couple of episodes, we could give those to individuals. There were definitely some of our, the individuals we interviewed that there was some more prep time. So I'll give you the perfect example. For Autism Acceptance Month, we did choose to interview an employee that was on the spectrum. And so it was, she made us aware, like, I need to stay on topic because, she just has a tendency to go on. And you could really tell she prepared herself when we actually sat down to do the interview, and it was fantastic. It was so well received. She was very eloquent in what she said, and it was just coming from the mouth of somebody that is neurodivergent to really say, this is who we are, this is what we're about, how we want to be treated. So I think it was more so just putting their hesitations at ease in terms of like being in front of an audience but not live in front of an audience.
Yeah, that's super helpful. You're presenting this great content. What kind of feedback loops did you open up to see how it was resonating? Did you have opportunities to engage with listeners and people who are consuming it? Did you have opportunities to engage with the speakers afterwards? And did you get any positive feedback or constructive feedback, as you were going through the process?
Yeah, definitely. So we actually even have an internal podcast email address and inbox where people can submit like ideas to talking points, things that they want us to explore in the future. But they also gave us ideas and being like, hey, listen, Melissa and I were brand new to the space. We were like, we have no idea what we're doing. So our first podcast was 60 minutes long. And like, okay, great. But when it's like question, answer, right? And it literally feels like a scripted interview, 60 minutes is a very long time. So we started getting some feedback being like, hey guys, love the stuff. Maybe cut it down to like 40 minutes. See how that goes. Or your announcements were running a little bit longer than 10 minutes. Maybe cut it down to 4. So we did have a lot of really good feedback saying like, great stuff, but here's some constructive criticism. And now we're taking that constructive criticism. And now that we're ramping up to go out with season 2 next month, we're actually interviewing our first guest next week. We're awesome. About all these different ways to kind of improve its accessibility, improve, its entertainment factor, all these different things to just continue listeners coming back to us. But no, we did. We had a full feedback loop being like, tell us what you love and what you hate. Because right now, I think my baby's gold, and I'm going to say like, yo, this is the greatest thing on earth next to the TXL show, right? But
yeah,
but
sure.
I know that's not true. And I need to listen to the listeners and see what they want.
Yeah, you heard me at the top of the episode. I did claim that TXL is the greatest show on the internet, and you'd be hard pressed to find a better show at 12 p.m. Eastern on Thursday.
So we're number two. We're number 2 on that list.
No, well, different kind of show, right? So number 1 in our own regards. I do have a question, follow-up question, Derek. So, you talked about kind of iterating on the format and iterating on the length and a couple of different things. But just stepping back a little bit, how did you even navigate producing the show in the first place? Deciding how you were going to do the recordings, and did you edit them, or did you just roll them unedited? And is that a skill that you had or someone on the team had, or did you have to go find that skill? Like what was the production process for you?
So it's funny you say that, because actually I was on LinkedIn, like, I don't know, a couple months ago, and I got a sponsored, like, targeted ad on my newsfeed, and it said, "You're a communications director. You're not a video editor." I was like, interesting. I was like, that's kind of how I feel, right? So, like, great idea, great concept. Let's go out with it. But it was really, I mean, it's Ally in the Room is much more than just Melissa and I. It's, we're the co-hosts in it, but we then leaned on the marketing team support, and the marketing team has been playing a phenomenal role in editing it, getting it in nice packages. They were the ones that helped us with the artwork, the intro music, the outro music, packaging it all together, and then giving us a nice thing to then go out with, to release with. So I had to, after talking to Melissa, after talking to our boss, after then getting all the right buy-in, then going to the marketing team being like, "Hey guys, this is what we're trying to do with it." But it's all internal. So it's for our internal audience. But then it was also kind of explaining, like, so if this thing goes really well, then the vision for this is, like, let's use this as another, like, content channel to engage with, either incoming candidates who want to work at CAI, or sales prospects, and maybe we get some of our clients involved. Now I'm taking a page out of Phenom's book and being like, because that's what you guys do here, right? But it's how can we then brand it for an external audience? So
sure.
Where we're at.
I thought it was interesting that, we do our show live.
Yeah.
With all the technical challenges and everything that we, will experience, along the way too. And we've had our fair share. There are a lot of benefits to not doing this live, right? And recording it with authenticity, right? But then packaging it up and then allowing people to consume it asynchronously. So you made a conscious decision to do it that way. Melissa, I'm curious, what were the benefits that you found in doing it that way versus what we're doing right now, which is, be here at this time and place?
Sure. So I think a lot of individuals, when the pandemic hit, they had to figure out how to connect with their employees. At CAI, we've kind of always had that, because we have individuals that would work out at client sites and they would assimilate more with the client. And so whenever we did some kind of program, we always had to do an online element. And sometimes employees couldn't connect because there was a firewall at the client site, or maybe they were a service desk analyst and they didn't get a break until 3:00 in the afternoon. So it was and continues to be so important to us that even when we do live sessions, that we package them and allow people to view them at other times. So for us, it was kind of a no-brainer. That, and sometimes trying to we do interview executives, and executive available like at a lunchtime spot was tough, as well as, employees that we interview that are, we're billable to the client. And so the time that they take out to watch that, they can't always, they have to make that up in some aspect. So to record it, I think just made a lot more sense. And especially for, our boss, who was kind of familiar with podcasts, but not too much, she wanted to see what exactly we were going to be showing to our employees. She is great with feedback. So we kind of coin her as the executive producer, because she definitely has creative control at all times. And we were always better for it. We had to change up a couple of the things based on her feedback. So for us, it's always about recording, even when we do things that are live.
Yeah. And you had mentioned earlier too, when you're in the HR space, if you're talking about sensitive topics, there is that security blanket, you know, of just knowing
Sure.
that if you had to go back, if you had to pull back, if you had to edit something, if you had to state something, you could, you know. So I
Yeah, I mean, I think it also puts some of our guests at ease. So, you know, in particular for Pride Month, when we were interviewing one of our employees that identifies as non-binary, you know, they told us not all of my team even knows that I'm non-binary. So not only were they brave enough to really get interviewed on what exactly that means, because we had a lot of questions that, you know, they knew that they were going to have to, you know, explain or at least kind of open that door to kind of come out to some of their coworkers. So that I think puts them at ease knowing that it's not live. You know, they can look at it, you know, and kind of reflect on what they said during the interview.
Yeah, and that particular guest that Melissa's talking about actually came to us and was like, I would love to be, I want to come on. So it's cool to, once you start, it's like when you build it, they will come. Like that's exactly what people were, they were coming to us and being like, I have a really cool story. Would you mind exploring this with me? And so it's really cool. It really improves the employee engagement factor then within the company.
Mm-hmm.
You know you're doing something right when you have employees coming to you, right? Wanting to be on and wanting to start to explore their stories with you, which I think is a great testament to the work that you both have done. Ally in the Room, of course, isn't the only thing that you're doing at CAI, you know, to celebrate diversity, equity, and inclusion. You are doing other things to kind of share some of those authentic stories, to have the real dialogue. So Melissa, you know, what else have you been working on, you know, just to inspire our listeners out there? What else have you been working on at CAI to really continue this?
So right now, this week, we are in our 3rd annual Diversity Days. So we launched this officially 2 years ago, kind of our diversity, equity, and inclusion journey started. So a part of that, we have different fun activities. We do celebrations. We had launched 2 years ago at that time what we call Courageous Conversations. That happens once a quarter. And it is a live Zoom. Sometimes we have a topic. Sometimes, you know, it could be mental health awareness. It could be, you know, work-life balance. And it is just an open forum to employees to come on to share their experience if they're struggling, if they're not. And, you know, just to have really good conversations. Those are never recorded. So they're generally at about 4:00 in the afternoon where most people can attend. So that is one way. We've done some pretty interesting things. Last year, we did a virtual cooking contest where we had employee resource group members and as well as some executives pair up. And Derek and I were the moderators for that. So it was a virtual cooking contest. And actually, what we did on Tuesday, we've won a couple. We won Forbes Best Employer, one of the best employers for diversity, a couple of other awards over the past couple of years. So we wanted to celebrate and give back to our employees. We actually had a virtual comedy show. There were 6 comedians. All subject was all diversity. It was, and you know, we were a little nervous. The president was a little nervous. You know, you've got comedians, and some of them were very well known. They killed it. It was fantastic. Our employees loved it. We got so many messages. So it's being creative. Aside from that, our employee resource groups can host power hours that have specific topics. Our disability ERG group had a couple called Squirmy and Grubs. I believe they have their own podcast as well. And it's about an interable relationship. So the husband is disabled and the wife is not, and what those dynamics look like. So there were just so many opportunities. A lot of the great ideas come from those employee resource groups as well.
Yeah. I was keeping count of the ideas that our listeners can come up with, and I ran out of fingers down here. So that's awesome. Derek, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I was just gonna, yeah, it's everything Melissa's explaining right now, right? Is the it's about gone are the traditional days of clocking in 9 to 5, putting in your hours and leaving, right? We want to give our employees a true employee experience and really being, you know, being integral in their lives, because we want everyone to bring their authentic selves to work, and there's no other better way than to provide these forums for them to, you know, say what's on their mind and feel like they're being heard, acknowledged. And so Melissa and the team have really done a really good job at doing that.
I was going to say one other thing I want to point out because I thought it was fantastic. Last summer, our ERG groups collectively came together to run a summer music series, and each month a different ERG created a playlist on iTunes, Spotify. You could download it with songs that they love. So, and why they chose those songs to be on the playlist. We're doing movies this summer. So, I mean, all the playlists were fantastic. It was great if you were working out. So just the creativity amongst our groups, internal scavenger hunts on our intranet so that it's kind of like go at your own pace, but you could still potentially win a prize as well as learn different things. So it's really, limitless if you really sit down and get creative.
I love seeing the involvement from the ERG groups. Is that something that's like, do your ERG group leaders meet frequently, or do they communicate? Or is that something, Melissa, that you try to facilitate?
So I oversee and kind of help to lead the ERG groups. I meet with all the leads of the groups once a month, but we kind of let them run. We give them a budget, and I have to say they've only been in existence for 2.5 years, but the things that they have done are fantastic. And I think it started out as events, let's do this fun thing and present. Now it's them giving us advice on our benefits offerings. If a policy comes out, that they're like, you know what, I this kind of targets this group, maybe we should look at things. So they're, getting deeper with their meaning. But they're just fantastic groups led by, again, all employee led.
When we talk about, having diversity, equity, and inclusion break out of the About Us page, right? And really be weaved into the fabric of the culture and the fabric of the employee experience, as Derek mentioned, like this is it, right? So if you're just tuning in, rewind about 5 minutes, and you will get such a fantastic list of things that you can experiment with at your organization, to try to encourage, weaving this into the fabric. And as you both know, I'm going to use the buzzword. I don't have my buzzword button in front of me, but the Great Resignation, has shown us, though, that employees will leave. Like, if employees do not feel connected to the purpose of the organization and to each other, and they don't feel connected to what your organization stands for, they will leave. Like, that is a contributing factor. We've seen that happen in volume numbers over the past 18 months. And I think that the work that you're doing is fantastic and super bold. Diversity flavored comedy, I don't know, that seems a little risque to me, but you guys made it happen apparently, and it seems like it worked out for the better.
And it was one of those that we braced ourselves because you don't really know, it's an outside vendor you're dealing with, and like I said, they knocked it out of the park.
Professionals.
That's awesome.
It's good to laugh at yourself too. Like, we all have like these like stereotypes about, and so it was fun to be able to poke fun at ourselves and be like, yeah, like that makes sense, like, so it was really good. It was great.
And that contributes to the authenticity of it too, I think, and not making it feel so formulaic or stiff. Like, it's real, and I think that brings some of that realness to it. For any of our viewers on LinkedIn, I'm super curious, because I've heard so many great ideas of things that HR teams can explore and experiment with. Chime into the comments if you're tuning in on LinkedIn or YouTube or Facebook. Let me know and let us know, what is your organization doing that you really like? So if there's something that your organization is doing to celebrate diversity, equity, and inclusion, and you have stopped and paused and thought, like, that's an amazing thing, and I'm so glad my organization does that, drop it in the comments. Let us know, because I'd love to get more ideas. Let's keep the ideas flowing. Derek, you had mentioned season 1 has wrapped up of Ally in the Room. You have your first interview scheduled for season 2. What's next for the show? Are you going to take it from internal to external? What are you thinking?
That's the plan. Yeah. We are looking to get it on Spotify, iTunes, making it more accessible for our employees and also people who don't know who CAI is, and being able to use that to tell CAI's story. We're going to change up with the format a little bit too. Just trying to make it more engaging, more interactive. So there's plenty of other different ideas. I've actually even reached out to a vendor who helps out with companies podcasts, and I gave them a few of our episodes, like the pilot, couple of the episodes, and then like we ended last season with the blooper reel. Just stupid things that I were saying that were like, funny. So I sent them over all those different things and just try to get a gauge of like, what do you think we should improve upon? What could you help us out with? So we're looking to just try to change it as best as possible.
Awesome.
So hopefully we get it from other people.
Yeah, I have one last question too. We talked a little bit about authenticity, right? And clearly you've been able to inject a lot of that into the show, and into a lot of these other activities. Derek, you had mentioned earlier that it is Pride Month. And LinkedIn, as I'm scrolling through my feed, I'm seeing a lot of rainbow colors, rainbow colored logos that I know and and we all know they're going to disappear in about 20 days. So it's like, it's great to see organizations do put out these signals, right? And you see a lot of posts, and the posts, again, sometimes they feel very formulaic, right? And it's great to see these signals, right? But I'm also seeing a lot of folks in the community saying you have to do more than that, right? And it's not necessarily authentic to just, wear these colors for 30 days, right? So what else can you do? So, Melissa, you have a ton of experience here, creating content, working on this side of the house. What are your tips, for an organization to really try to weave the authenticity in, so it doesn't feel like you're doing it just to do it, and that's, and employees, they can see right through it, right? Employees know, so what are your tips and how you can go about this?
So essentially ask your employees. The employee resource groups are there because they do their own things internally, but I'm also always asking them, or certain representatives, what could we be doing? For example, a couple of years ago, we realized, there's so much terminology within our LGBTQ population that not everybody understands. So we actually had two of our ERG members, Derek being one, that worked with me, and we created this fantastic presentation on education. And so for me, I'm always driving that into our ERGs. We need to educate people. They need to learn about it, because then, you make people feel more comfortable because they know about it. So, definitely ask your employees, get them involved. And absolutely, it was so often that I was in the compliance area of HR, and you're calculating the numbers of your minority percentage, your female percentage. But it's looking at those numbers and saying, okay, what can we do to improve? And asking your employees, because if you're a part of that group, maybe, and you're not a part, like myself, I'm not part of the LGBTQ, I'm a proud ally now. So I want to know, what can I be doing better with these programs, with some of our policies? So I guess the big takeaway is ask your employees and get them involved in the process. So that way they're not being told, they're being asked and consulted.
Yeah, I go ahead.
It's also to go beyond, it's everything we're doing internally of what Melissa just said, but it's also going beyond the four walls of the office. So it's partnering with, great advocates, other organizations who specialize in whatever diversity group that they specialize in, or, improving your supplier diversity and getting the right suppliers and the right vendors who are, minority owned. So it's like essentially putting your money where your mouth is, it's more than just saying it. It's walking the walk.
Yeah. Understanding what it means to be a 365 ally versus a 30-day ally, like understanding what it means, to take it beyond June. Right. So I totally appreciate that. Great tips. This has been awesome. Thank you both. Thank you both for joining. Thank you for the awesome work that you're doing. As allies, for allies, creating Ally in the Room, using that and coming on the show and using that as a template for what other organizations can do, right, to start to share their own unique employee stories and experiences. Really appreciate it. Always asking, what are your final thoughts? Any tips, any final thoughts for HR organizations out there who are trying to do better, who are trying to experiment, who are trying to explore? We'll start with Derek, and then we'll go to Melissa. Derek, any final thoughts?
I think that my only thought would be not to shy away from it and be in communications, to verbalize it, to say what you're doing, pound your chest a little bit to kind of be an example for others. So that way other people can learn from you what you're doing. Because I'm also looking out for what other organizations are doing. So I would say use the channels that you have to promote who you are.
Awesome. Love it. Melissa, any final tips, any final thoughts for our listeners?
Sure. So I know that there's probably people listening that, they're like, oh, this is all well and good, but how do we fund it? How do we get that business buy-in? And I think it's sometimes it's telling, not asking, and relating it back to that true business case. You mentioned the Great Resignation. People and candidates are asking for this now. So if you don't do something like this, your business is 100% going to suffer for it. So I think it's just making those executives and, working your way up, making them aware of what's going on and the why that's behind it. But again, it doesn't have to be something that's incredibly costly. A really cool presentation, is just as good as, giving somebody, a $25 gift card. So you can do some of these things and they aren't a very high expense just to get the ball rolling.
I love it. Awesome. Well, thank you both so much for joining me today. When season 2 drops on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all your favorite podcatchers and podcast players, Melissa and Derek, be sure to feed me the link. We'll shout it out on the show when it's ready for consumption. Make sure people know where to find it so they can check it out. I'm excited to see you two as kind of a co-hosting duo. It seems like you have a pretty good dynamic. So I'm excited to check it out. So I'm looking forward to that for sure. But thank you both so much. I hope you have an amazing continuation to your week. And after season 2 wraps up, come back on the show. We'll talk about how it went and anything that you learned from season 2. That'd be awesome.
Thank you. Definitely will.
See you guys. Well, there you have it. Amazing interview, amazing conversation with Derek and Melissa. They're doing awesome things. I love this idea. We're going to continue to explore this using internal podcasts and using unconventional channels to really engage with your employees and create an employee experience that employees really connect with, right? And again, something that is really exploring the authenticity of what employees are experiencing every single day, what they bring to work every single day. So it's super awesome. Thank you so much for your time and your attention joining me today. Really appreciate it. There are thousands of ways to spend your Thursday lunch hour, your Thursday mornings, and you chose to spend it with us here at Phenom and Talent Experience Live. So thank you. Tune in next week. We have an awesome episode. Our friends from KinderCare will be with us next week. It's going to be a great conversation. Join us next week. We'll look forward to it. And with that, have an awesome continuation to your week. Have an amazing weekend. Take some time out for yourself. Don't forget to have a little mindfulness time. Don't forget to breathe. Don't forget to take some time out. And we will catch you on the next one.